Very good afternoon, guys. Welcome to another episode on the Reality Shift. Today we are interviewing the wonderful Genna Wae Webster, the founder of Waewest, and it's an absolute honor to have her on the show today. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Genna.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Like I know, like we chopped it up a bit early on, and yeah, man. So I just want to get straight into it.
Cool.
So yeah, could you just tell us a bit about yourself?
Sure.
You know, where you grew up, and yeah, and just coming into the person that you are today, pretty much.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, today I'm a clothing designer,
Yeah.
so that's what I do now. We do a lot of local manufacturing, but in terms of how I got to where I was 20 years ago,
Yeah.
I grew up in Westville
Yeah.
and went to Westville
I
Girls.
didn't even know that.
Yeah. This was my
geez.
hometown.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So yeah, I grew up here. It was quite lonely as a different kid, being one of the unusual kids.
Yeah,
but I still had lots of friends. It just was you just never fit in, you know. So and I became a clothing designer because I actually wanted to be a cartoonist for superhero comics, but there was no job for that back then.
Yeah.
I mean, even now it's hard to get into that
Very
industry.
niche, yeah.
So the next best thing was costume design. Also, no money there, so I became a clothing designer. So that's how
Yeah.
I got to where I got to, and I didn't study it. Did
Okay.
desktop publishing for 4 months at Hurt and Carter because I had to have the graphic side.
Okay.
And then a crash course in Italian dressmaking with a woman named Janie Mitchell,
Yeah.
and she's an amazing human, and that's where I learned my pattern making from. So that's
Okay.
and then I just worked very hard to get recognized.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So coming into this fashion space right now, I mean, how has it been? I mean, in terms of the dynamics,
Yeah.
let's just talk about your being in this field, your tenure, or however long you've been in the fashion industry.
Yeah.
How has this experience being in this field? How has it been for you?
I actually wasn't allowed to get into it. My family didn't want me to study it because they thought it would be too cutthroat.
Yeah.
But I didn't find it cutthroat. I just found it. I found it a place where you could kind of mold it into your own kind of sort of world, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because everything you do it is what you put out there. It is what you project. So
Yeah.
if you're a particularly bitchy person who doesn't play well with others, then you're going to attract that. And there is that in any industry, but
Yeah.
particularly in advertising and clothing. You know, the more creative types, they do tend to be a little bit more out there. But I found it to be very rewarding and challenging. I've grown a lot in confidence from it, where I think if you weren't that way inclined, you might not be able to cope with the stress. Something I've learned most recently is that you don't need to be stressed in a stressful industry, because it's always stressful, so you're always going to be stressed.
Yeah.
So why carry that with
And that
you?
must have taken a lot of unlearning.
Completely.
Yeah.
I've been doing clothing for 20 years. It's taken me 20 years to learn that.
Jeez.
To just go, well, because in our industry you're dealing with so many different suppliers
Yeah.
that there's so many balls up in the air that could be dropped by any number of the person.
Yeah.
You know, there's just
Yeah.
too many people that you're depending on to get that one product out.
Yeah.
So a lot of people look at clothing and they're like, oh, it's, you know, creative and flighty, and
Yeah.
it's literally like putting a jigsaw puzzle together, and you have to worry about all these other people that are helping you put the jigsaw piece together.
Exactly.
And you know, when you do a jigsaw and somebody puts the wrong piece in the wrong place, and then you've got to kind of figure out where that is, that's clothing.
Oh man.
Yeah.
So in terms of you being in the industry for 20 years,
Yeah.
what kind of ventures have you within that space? I'm sure you've got a wealth of experience.
Yeah.
And would you like to touch on a bit of that?
Yeah. So I started in the commercial sector. I'm still in the commercial sector, but I'm self-employed.
Okay.
But when I started in the commercial sector, I started as a graphics artist. Was a graphics artist for about a year, became a clothing designer for another 3 or 4 years, and then I'd been told by my stepdad, who's in textiles, and half of my family are in clothing, so they all kind of know. Yeah. So I'd been told, like, don't focus on being a designer, focus on being a merchandiser. There's more money to be made as a merchandiser. So, and our industry evolved that you could become a merchandiser who's also a designer. So you kind of did like the creative and, you know, the problem solving and overseeing and stuff. So I set out to become a merchandiser quite early on, and was a merchandiser in like the first 4 or 5 years of my career. So, and then ever since then, that's what I've been doing. And I've worked for brands like Echo, New York.
That used to be me, like back in the day. Yeah.
Oh, they're awesome brands.
Yeah.
And Bad Girl was my longest job.
Yeah.
Although half of it I was self-employed, and I did Gotcha Girl, and I also I pretty much started in the chain store sector. Pretty much catalyzed the whole novelty, naughty nurse, French maid, you know, the bridal shower dress up costumes. I started that and Temptations. So, and then I enjoyed that so much that I decided to focus on lingerie. And then after that, I was supplying lingerie stores, ladies' essential boutiques, with lingerie that they wanted me to do for them. And I had my own little CMT that used to do all the manufacturing in-house, which had 5 ladies in it.
Yeah.
And we all worked together to figure stuff out and trained each other and helped each other. And it was a good little family for about 6 years. And I had a shop as well for about 3 years.
I remember seeing that, a memory on Facebook.
Yeah. It was called Sam South African Made, because most of my career has been about local.
Yeah.
So, and still is.
Yeah, has to be.
Yeah, and then about 3.5 years ago, I started a local manufacturing business with my stepdad. When I went through a divorce, I decided to close all my other businesses and start fresh. So.
Okay. Yeah. And how is that manufacture going now? How is it?
After COVID?
Okay, let's actually dive into that.
Yeah.
How has COVID-19 and the lockdown actually affected, you know, the whole industry and you personally and business-wise? Psychologically, that would be lovely to get into.
I would be lying if I didn't say that I hadn't had a few breakdowns, which is where it goes back to the whole not letting stress get to you aspect, because you literally cannot control what the world is going through right now.
Exactly.
I know a lot of the other guys in the industry, they're trading quite well in terms of that they've got good orders on the books, but they've been in the industry longer than us in terms of their relationship with the chain stores.
Okay.
So they've been able to retain that customer. But all of us, I think, have suffered in terms of turnover. Obviously, you've had months of just no turnover.
Yeah.
I know big companies who have, they had orders booked for the whole of summer. All those orders were cancelled when COVID hit, and they had to start over with the reapplication of the tenders to try and get the orders. Yeah. So for us, it was we were doing masks before it became a thing. We had a client who had
so you already had experience. You already knew kind of.
Yeah. Well, it was only in like the few weeks before lockdown that we got this client, and she was interested in us doing the mask for her, and nobody else had like kind of jumped on the bandwagon yet.
Yeah.
So we started working on that, and it was very stressful once we heard that lockdown was happening, because the government only really gave you like 3 days to actually sort out all your paperwork, and we weren't sure who was going to open again and who wasn't, because a lot of people didn't know how the whole thing was going to work. So a lot of people just closed and said that they weren't going to reopen. Even if you got an order for 500,000 masks, they weren't going to open to sell you their plastic bags to pack them in. So we used to have a few sort of arguments in that week with those people. But it was stressful. It was stressful, and then I found like the solace in like, I'm doing something good. I'm going to save lives, because we were focusing on a mask that we were hoping to get, you know, approved by the medical board, and then we found out how difficult that was to do. So you couldn't do that. So it was just this constant like ebb and flow of like I'm way up here and I'm busy and I'm doing really well, and then like just this crash of like I don't know what I'm doing with my life. Yeah. So it's been stressful.
Yeah. I remember, I think I was watching something online, and I think it was the founder of Alibaba. He was saying like, if you can weather, and you're in business, this period, you can weather anything.
Yeah, pretty much.
Literally anything. So I can imagine, that period of time.